Hey everyone. So, before we get started today, I was actually hoping to do this last night, but a combination of real life problems and a massive headache meant that I just wasn't really up for it. So, let's talk about the FF7 thing really quick. And by really quick, I mean not that quick. Now, before you mention anything else, I just want to point out that we will actually not be having the audio playing. Whoops, it's a little too big. Hang on, let me shrink this a bit. A little too much, a little too much. And up a bit. That'll do. All right, we're not going to have the audio playing. And you're probably like, harsh, why wouldn't you have the audio playing? Let's just say that I've been having more and more and more issues with copyright garbage with regards to audio being present in my videos and my streams. So I'm just going to skip the whole problem this time and not have it be there. So that's what we're doing with that. Let's just go ahead and do a quick run through of some of my thoughts. I'm sure most of you have already thought about this, but a lot of people are asking for an analysis video, so we're going to go ahead and slow this down a little bit at half speed here so I can kind of showcase. So obviously, I do like a lot of the things we've been showcasing here. Midgar looks amazing. Absolutely gorgeous. No surprise there. Don't really have much to add to that. Vix, Wedge, and Jesse are actually interesting in their design. Not quite what I would have envisioned, if I'm being completely honest, but I like it. I like the way they presented. By the way, call me a weirdo, but I actually like Barrett's design here. The sunglasses I don't care about, but he actually looks smaller, less bulky than he did in actually FF7 and in several other works that have showcased FF7. And personally, I actually think that's a better look for him. That's just an aesthetic thing. I'm not going to call that a good or a bad. But I do think that that looks very well for him here. Let me make myself smaller. You don't really need to see me. I'll be down here in the corner. Um, I also rather like a couple other things here. First of all, Cloud's overall look is surprisingly simple. You can see it most clearly right there, and I think that is probably the best thing that they could have done with that. One of the problems Square in general has had lately, and admittedly Nomura personally tends to have, is what I like to call over-design. Um, Over-design is, of course, when probably the worst example of this is actually War from the Darksiders series. There's so much, and it's so busy, and there's just so many different complexities and details and all that crap. In the design that it gets a little ridiculous. By contrast here, Cloud actually looks quite simple. He's got the belts, he's got that thing, vest, shirt, shoulder pads, pants, the gauntlet, of course, and that's basically it. And I like that. Actually, if you notice, that's kind of similar to what they're going with Barrett. I feel like this is a move in a good direction. Because it would have been very easy for them to try and touch up the FF7 characters to look like, and there's no nice way to put this, the FF13 characters. And they haven't. I mean, you can see it here as well. Jesse and Vix there, both, or Biggs, excuse me, both actually have, is it Vix or Biggs? I actually don't remember. But anyways, or is it Wedge? Either way, those two don't have a particularly overintended thing. And this is another nice thing. Okay, so one of my complaints that I've always had about Final Fantasy X, bear with me, is that the design of everyone's costumes. I call them costumes. The clothing everyone wears in FF10 is ridiculous, in my opinion. It is way over designed, first of all, and second of all, I've always wondered how a society that lives under the constant threat of sin can have such fanciful architecture and have such fanciful clothing designs. It's a little bit silly, but I'm not bashing FF10, but it's always been something that's bothered me. And again, this is something that's been true in several FFs basically since they've started that trend of over-design. But if you notice here, whoops, I hit Alt apparently. If you notice, if you look into the background here, in just a second, you'll see several of the random NPCs, the normal people wandering around Midgar, and you'll see that most of them just have normal outfits, normal, common, everyday clothing. Here, we'll see it in just right there and right there. I know that's very quick, and forgive me. Here, let's zip back just a second so you can really see what I'm talking about. If I can get it pause at the right time. So you can see that guy's just wearing a vest and some pants and a shirt, and that's basically it. The guy back there, he's just wearing a usual coat, trance outfit. That guy's got a little bit more going on. Woman in the background's literally just wearing a t-shirt and jeans. I like that. I like that. I am glad that they are going back and making things back to the less designed format, because that's kind of what we had going on in the FF7 era of Final Fantasy. It would have been very, very easy for the people doing this remake to do that over-designed thing, and they're not. Now, I'm not just saying this is a good thing because of the fact that it means, because I don't like the over-designed thing. I'm saying it's a good thing because they didn't over-design then, and they're sticking true to that. So that's a good sign, in my opinion, the fact that they're actually willing to go back to the way the aesthetic worked then, rather than trying a new aesthetic. So that's good. Definite positive there. Love the design of the Buster, clearly showing its age there, which makes sense since, Angeal had obviously, and Zack both have been using it prior to him. So it looks like a sword that's seen some action, as well it should. As someone pointed out in chat, Cloud actually looks rather sickly throughout this whole thing. We'll see a really good close-up of him later, and you'll really be able to see how unwell he looks. This is a good shot of it right here, too, which makes perfect sense. Remember, this is not very long after Genova Cloud basically was created, for lack of a better way to put it. Oh, by the way, call me weird, but I like the new gun arm design there. It's exactly what I would actually picture a gun arm like that to actually look like. You notice it even has a chunk for ammunition and whatnot, and he's got some spare ammo chunks going there, so that's great. This is nice right here. This is actually gameplay. I know it. This is funny. You can always tell what's difference between scripted gameplay and scripted cutscenes. This is scripted cutscene right here, but this is actual gameplay. This is actually someone wandering through the ruins right here, like that, sneaking into the things, breaking out of the thing, etc. The funny thing is, if I'm not mistaken, that previous section didn't really have like that's not really a big thing in FF7. So that's probably the section where they're escaping from the reactor, if I were to guess. And I like that because it's adding, fleshing out to a scene that in previous, if you remember, was a single screen with you, and you come out of the fire. That's all it was. So they're adding a little bit to that. There's also some downsides to that, which I will talk about in just a minute. So I just wanted to point out here, first of all, this is great. This is exactly what I always pictured Midgar looking like. I don't have anything else to add to that, other than the fact that, once again, the people, as you can see, just look like normal people, ordinary outfits, etc. And, of course, this wonderful scene. We're about to see... Look at how terrible he looks there. Again, I want to stress, this is a Cloud, days after the Zack incident at the end of Crisis Core. So this is a Cloud who is still just barely functional, just barely getting himself together. I hope that they actually, if this is me dreaming here, but I would love it if they start off with him looking this sickly and horrible, and he starts to get more and more, coherent, and it gets healthier looking as the game goes on, and then the big reveal hit, and it's like, oh my god, that would be a great aspect of visual storytelling there. Also, if you notice, his eyes do have the thing going, so that's nice. And there's Wedge, or whichever one it is back there, which is awesome. Once again, more of the mission here. Hey. I like their design on him, by the way. This is actually a better shot of it right back here. Right there. You can see him in the lower left. It's too easy, I've noticed, for people designing characters when they want a large character, a fat character, to overdo it. To make someone who is either cartoonishly fat or make someone who's fat, aka looks like a normal person. I feel like that back there is actually a really nice in-between stuff. That's probably one of the better examples of making a large character without looking him cartoonishly obese. We'll talk about that in just a second, Final Cloud. So bear with me, okay? Also, that we still don't have full confirmation on that, so try to keep that in mind. Also, look at Cloud's expression or lack thereof. Really, really helps the initial perspective on Cloud there. So I like the Shinra MP design. This is interesting what happens right here. And in slow-mo you can really see how that looks there. You can even see the black goop crap that is indicative of Genova going through him there, which helps. And of course, here's the combat, which is the thing I actually wanted to talk about the most. This is my opinion, but the combat looks amazing. Absolutely amazing. I am super hyped for this. First of all, we do have a very minimalistic UI, which I tend to like as long as it's done well. We've got the command tree over there, we've got the stats over there, and that's basically it. The numbers will, of course, pop up on them as they or we are hit. If you pay attention, you'll notice a couple of things here. Forgive me for doing this. Let's actually slow this down a little bit more. If you pay attention here, you'll notice that there's actually a targeting reticule right there. You see it on the guy? So you actually have the ability to lock on to a given target, which again makes me feel, I know, FF15, yada yada. I haven't played FF15. I have played Kingdom Hearts. And I mention that because this combat feels very Kingdom Heartsy to me. Picking and locking onto a target, moving through them, etc. There's one question I have which we don't have an answer for, which is, how will we control a lot of the party members? Because if you notice, the camera clearly shifts over to Barrett here, and we do see Cloud and Barrett over on the right here. So we do have both characters, at our disposal, and so we're not having the FF13 effect, which, I'm sorry, I don't wish to bash FF13 here, but one of the things that bothered me the most about FF13 was the fact that we could only control lightning. That just drove me crazy. You could only control one character. Drove me crazy. So that's good, but pay attention to what Cloud does here. You notice he's actually still acting back there. We even still see the numbers from Cloud's attack in the background. So a couple of possibilities here. First, and the most likely possibility, is the FF12 thing, aka the Gambit system. Personally, I think that would be a really good idea for them to do, the FF12 system. I know you're going to be like, oh, I hate you. But what I mean by this is it's basically actually the Dragon Age Origins system, if I was to be a little more blunt about it. You can set up an AI script for the party members you are not directly controlling right now, and you can switch between party members at will, like that. Notice this is the same fight in which he is switching back and forth between Cloud and Barrett and whatnot. Now, that attack right there is something I really want to talk about, because I was asked about this. My first reaction was that it was clearly limit breaks, but then I started to think about it. I was like, actually, no. I think that's a new system. This is pure speculation. But if you pay attention here, I talked about this on the Kingdom Hearts thing as well. Thank you, Shadow. If you pay attention, I mentioned the Kingdom Hearts things. I think they have a new layer of limit breaks, okay? I think what they're going to do is they're going to make the actual limit breaks, the ones we know. Here, okay, I'll show what I mean here. Okay, in the far right here, actually I might be covering it a bit. Hang on. Let me... Okay. You see this over here? This is kind of hard to see, but you've got, Cloud's name, his HP, a bar under Cloud's thing, which is not his ATB bar, clearly is not his ATB. Then you've got HP, MP, and then something that I know that's hard to read, but what it says is limit. Now, the limit bar is completely empty. That's relevant. This is actually very, very important. Because what I think is happening here is they're going to have limit breaks in the old style, which is you get hit and you slowly fill the limit bar, and then you unleash a really big, massive, incredibly powerful attack that is very, very strong and is basically there for boss fights or very desperate fights, right? But then you're like, well, what's this other thing that's under him? Now, pay attention. Notice how the bar is slowly shrinking, and then he gets a hit off. Barrett gets a hit. Cloud in the background's getting a hit. The bar is filling when they hit someone. When it goes red, they do an attack like that, which looks a hell of a lot like Braver. And Barrett does an attack which looks a hell of a lot like Big Shot, right? Which, of course, is their normal limit breaks. And, of course, that does looks like 8 times the damage. And, yeah, he does the lunging attack. Oh, maybe that's Braver. I forget which one is which. But the point is, what are those if not limit breaks? My point is, I feel like the existing limit breaks, the one we know and love, are going to be turned down into basically like combo finishers. You fill the bar by hitting enemies. You have access to those quickly. It helps add to the smoothness. It helps add to the cool factor. It helps make you feel like you have more agency on what exactly you can do in an individual fight. That kind of a thing. And in an ideal world, what I would love is if you could switch out which of these temporary limit breaks, temporary limits, whatever we're going to call them, based on design. For example, you notice that Cloud used 2 separate ones there. He has the... That's not Braver. What is that called? I don't remember. He has that, which is clearly one big single target hit, but then later on he does this lunge right here, again with a full bar, which does multiple hits like that and looks like it could hit in an AoE. So I would love the idea if we could actually switch out, like, I want this, one of these, like, 4 different attacks per character or 5 different attacks per character or whatever, and each one had a different purpose. Big single hit, spread hit, AoE, heal, that kind of a thing, giving us more tactical options in combat, and again helping to weave that smoothly into everyday combat, and again leaving the limit bar over there for the big limits, the one we use basically just on bosses. So that's what I think about that. That's basically all we really get to see of the combat, for all intents and purposes. If this truly is Kingdom Hearts style, that would be awesome. I really mean that sincerely. Yeah, another nice shot here. It looks like we're having a seamless transition thing, which is great. Oh, and you can see red numbers on yourself, so it's not like you can't get hit. But this is important. You notice how this is very important. You notice how your animation did not stop when you were getting hit. This is super, super important for game design mentality. Watch. He's still swinging, right? He gets the big thing, and he's still swinging in here. His attack is not interrupted, even though he is actively taking damage while that's happening. That is a design choice. If you've played Kingdom Hearts, you know that most of the time when you get hit, there's the whole knockback thing, and whatever you were doing is completely lost. Allowing you to keep attacking while taking damage. It's basically a completely different format of design, one that I agree with very much so. It enables the player to be able to recover better if they're in a bad situation. It also gives the player the option tactically of trying to basically push through the damage, defeat them before we are defeated, kind of a strategy. So I like that, and I really hope that I'm reading that correctly there. And of course, there's the first boss. That's true, Kay. It is entirely possible that some attacks could stagger you. It's entirely possible there could be a new stat to prevent staggering. There are lots of ways this could be going, but I wanted to point that out because nobody else I've seen has actually commented on the fact that he wasn't having a stagger there. Also, I'm very sad at looking at these 3 people, knowing what's going to happen to them. Um, so yeah, Barrett. Ooh. I also like the fact that Barrett looks like he's this big grizzled warrior kind of guy here because he isn't. That works great. Um, so yeah, I actually already commented on that Deacon, but yeah, I agree with you. So we're gonna go and speed up because there's nothing really else to add here. But yeah, he looks terrible there. I'm sorry, hang on. We got to get that close up. He looks terrible there. Oh my God. He just looks like he's death there. I am amazed. No one has had Lowen in character is like, dude, are you okay? Look at that. And you might be like, well, maybe that's just what all humans look like, but we see several other people's faces in this intro, and they do not look nearly that screwed up. But yeah, so that's basically all I've got analysis-wise. Yeah, there's a good example of 3 people right there, which we just saw in slow motion. There is... so that's all I've got for the trailer proper. Let's talk about that episodic thing, shall we? First of all, let me just get off the brief version for those of you who don't like to listen to me ramble on forever and ever. Oh, by the way, I'm sorry, one last thing. Play it first on PS4. We might be looking at a timed exclusive situation here. I'm not sure what I think of that, but I am very, very hopeful that with the current trend of how things have been going with Square Enix, this game will come out on the PC like most of their others have been doing. Yeah, so let's see here. Let's go ahead and make myself ba-bong! Ba-bong! No, I'm kidding. Okay, so seriously though, let's talk about the episodic thing, because this is actually a complicated topic. I was actually discussing this in my head, practicing what I was going to say last night in the shower. I do that a lot. I do a lot of stuff for my show in the shower. All right, let's talk about the episodic thing, because this is... I know everyone hates it. I don't. Okay? That's the short version. I'm happy they're doing episodic. Maybe. Okay? Okay? If you're gonna hate me, if you're gonna loathe me for my opinion or whatever, now's the time to do it, okay? Alright, let's explain why. In my experience, there are basically 2 types of episodic things you can do when it comes to game release. And I'm going to use 2 examples to highlight these 2 types. There's StarCraft 2, and there's the Tales of Borderlands. There's what's it called? Telltale. There's the Telltale system, okay? Let's analyze these two systems for a moment, shall we, okay? The StarCraft 2 system is actually really simple. The idea here is we want to tell a full story that is effectively across multiple games. You can't really, if they were to put all of StarCraft 2's story in a single game, we would have had a much shorter game, a much smaller game. They would have had much less time to polish it, much less time and effort to put into the gameplay, into the design of the story, and everything that they did with it. It would have been much more shrunk, and we wouldn't have gotten nearly as much content. Now, of course, the immediate counter side to that is we had to pay for StarCraft 2 3 times. We had to pay for Wings of Liberty, Heart of the Swarm, and Legacy of the Void separately, because for all intents and purposes, the latter two were effectively expansions to the first one. Now, that's both the downside and the upside to that model, and I know that sounds weird, but hear me out, okay? Yes, I know they didn't, okay? I know that sounds weird, but the point here is obviously we had to pay for it 3 times. And that kind of sucks, right? And yet we basically got 3 separate games worth of content. 3 full games of content. And the latter 2 were priced at expansion prices. So that's not as bad as it could be. It's not like we had to just buy Wings of Liberty 3 times. The other side of this, and the other reason that this is okay, is because of the fact that it meant they were okay. They had the time and the budget and the ability to go to the corporate assholes who are running things and say, hey, we're still making money because Heart of the Swarm sold, because Wings of Liberty sold. And they're like, okay. So there was no penny pinching when it came to the budget side on their side because they were selling each episode. That is one of the unfortunate realities of game design. You have to consider the financial side of things from their perspective and from our perspective. And I mean from the developer's perspective and our perspective. The corporate side can go screw themselves. But the corporate side, the developer side is subservient to the corporate side. You follow me? So we got the StarCraft 2s that we did because of that fact. Now, I know that everyone's just going to be like, oh, I hate StarCraft 2 and you're totally wrong, Harsh. I don't care, okay? That's not the point of this. I'm just using StarCraft 2 as an example, what I feel to be a good example of this idea. The fact is, the other downside, though, of this model is time. We got Wings of Liberty, and then, like, what was it, like 2 years passed, and then we got Heart of the Swarm, and then like another 2 years passed, and we got Legacy of the Void. So we'll have to wait longer in between each episode. However, again, each episode will be much longer, much larger, have much more content, and be much more fulfilling as a result of that. Okay? That's the trade-off. The other method here is the Telltale method. The Telltale method is you buy the game once. Imagine if we just bought Wings of Liberty and then Heart of the Swarm and Legacy of the Void for free, but imagine they were also much shorter and came out much quicker. The idea here is you pop down one decent chunk of money for the game, and then each subsequent episode comes out is free. They come out much quicker. I want to stress that. You know, the difference in time is huge. We're talking about years to months, kind of a time crunch. But each episode is also way less in terms of content. You know, maybe a couple of hours worth of content as opposed to however long an actual full expansion or whatever would work. Ergo, again, from our side, it's financially better, but from their side, it's more financially unstable. You know, if they release FF7 and we pay for it once, and then each episode comes out, them not actually getting more money for each new episode is going to make it much more difficult for them to actually justify that budget from their side, from the developer side of things. Neither of these formats, the Telltale format or the StarCraft 2 format, are actually better than the other in my opinion. It's just different perspectives. Do you want more content, better, for more money, or do you want less content, quicker, for less money? That's really the only difference between the two. Both of them work for their own format. Now here's the catch. This is Square Enix. Okay? So I almost guarantee you they're going to be doing something like the former format. However, the only way the former format works, the StarCraft 2 format, is if each new episode is basically a full experience. That's the trade-off. We're willing to wait the time and pay the extra money for you to give us a full product. If for example, Telltale Games came out with episode 3 of, Game of Thrones or whatever's out right now, and you had to pay for that episode, and you had to pay the same price for that episode you paid for the whole game, we wouldn't be okay with that, would we? Because that's not the trade-off. Now you're breaking the unspoken agreement, Telltale. Of course, Telltale doesn't do this, but theoretically, I imagine most people, I certainly wouldn't be okay with that. I imagine most people would not be okay with that either. And that's my big worry here. On paper, the idea of episodic gaming actually makes perfect sense with FF7. It is, in fact, their only choice, if I'm being blunt. From a marketing and from a design perspective, they have no choice at all but to do episodic gaming. Let me explain what I mean by that. They screwed up. They should have let Matrix Software and the other group who was working on the proper remakes keep going like they were doing years ago. They didn't. They pulled the plug. They also have not been working on a Final Fantasy VII proper remake for years, and that is a problem because now they're behind the curve. This is the same problem I've talked about so many times. The longer we wait for something, the worse things get. And the problem is they have only recently started working on this project. They're even cheating, basically. Not really cheating, but they're shortcutting by having the whole using FF15's engine thing, which will cut down development time, but only by a certain amount. They're still going to have to do a ridiculous amount of work, and it's going to cost a crap ton of time and money to redo FF7 in the FF15 engine. Having an engine helps, certainly, but that's still... So my point is they're already behind the curve. They're already at the point where they're losing time effectively. So they have two options. Well, three options, okay? Option 3, give up. And yeah. Option 1, spend forever making this game come out. Which is, in my opinion, suicide. There's no reason they should do that, because if they spend the next 5 or so years, possibly longer, which is what I would say, 3 to 5 years, I'd say, is about the amount of time this project could take, then everything that I just mentioned is going to be much, much worse. 3 to 5 years waiting for this? And again, it's the whole Half-Life 2, the whole StarCraft 2, the whole Duke Nukem Forever thing all over again. The longer we wait, the worse the worse the release is going to be. However good the actual game is, it's going to be that much more difficult for it to actually properly sell when it finally goes live. So that would be shooting themselves in the foot, basically. And again, keeping in mind that this wouldn't be a problem if they started this back in time, but whatever. Option 2 is what they appear to be doing, the episodic thing. It's like, okay. We've got the engine, we've got the format, we've got the gameplay. Let's push out content. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, there. Okay, we've got the first chunk of content. Here, please buy this. We're going to go work on the second episode of content. Dun, 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 dun. Oh, okay, second episode of content, third episode of content. You see why I'm actually okay with the episodic concept? Because there's two things about the episodic content, and I've already mentioned the first. The first is, of course, the fact that, everything I mentioned about the time problem. But the second is, it is more likely that we will get the FF7 proper remake as a proper remake instead of a port with shiny graphics if they do it in this episodic format, because they're going to be less rushed. You follow? You follow my reasoning here? If they have to push forward the entire game out by 2017 or whatever, they're going to be rushed. If they have to push out enough of the game by 2017 in order to start working on the rest of the game, they're going to be able to take their time more, put more polish on it, put more refinement on it. You see where I'm going with this? This is why, overall, I'm okay with the episodic idea. Of course, it is worth noting that we don't actually know a lot of details about what they're doing episodic-wise here. This could actually just be a translation issue, and I wanted to mention that. And yeah, that's true, Leander. Now, there is a downside to the episodic thing. In fact, in my opinion, there's only really one downside to the episodic thing. You ready for this, guys? Because this is a bad one. This is Square. This is the company that is famous for being a company that looked at a successful, well-selling game and said, that's not selling well enough. That's underperforming. That's doing less than we expected. Square Enix is not the only company that does this. There's actually a term for this, and I forget what it's actually called, but it's basically the we want to be the best. We want all the money mentality. It's been very bad in the last 5 or so years in game development, where a lot of companies have wanted a best seller. They don't want a game that sells. They want a best seller. They want to be right at the top of the market. And it's really been hampering a lot when it comes to game design and development and, of course, marketing and publishing. And Square Enix could release Final Fantasy VII Episode 1, and it could sell. And it could be great. And we could even enjoy it, and it'd be like, yes! But what if it underperforms their expectations? What if it isn't a bestseller? They could pull the plug on that after episode 1, before we get the rest of the game. And there's nothing we can actually do about that because this is Square and they have squirrels for brains. There's a reason I came up with that term forever ago. So that, in my opinion, is the actual only downside of the concept of them doing this episodically. In an ideal world, they would have started working on an FF7 proper remake years ago, and it would be coming out fully done in 2017, and for $60, and we would be just done. This is not an ideal world. That is not what we have right now. In the situation of where we're at right now, this is all we got. So that's my thoughts on the whole episodic thing, the FF7 thing, etc. I expect a bajillion people to disagree with me when this goes on live on YouTube, and that's totally cool. I get it. I understand that a lot of people don't really think the same way I do, and that's a good thing. Now I'm going to answer one question really quick that Skrillian asked. Where was it? Hang on. There it is. Skrillian. If I was to separate the into episodes, how would I do it? That's actually a really good question, because if you've been paying attention, I did that with FF6. I divided it up into seasons. Personally, I think they should... there's two ways I would do it. One is the more idealistic, and one is the more pragmatic. The idealistic thing, I would actually have the episodes split up quite a bit. There would be quite a few different episodes. More than 3, in other words, to use the disc comparison. But each episode would be really full of content. And as people are mentioning in chat right now, the idea of all of Midgar being explorable rather than just the small chunks that we see. We've already seen tiny hints of this, as I already mentioned when we went over the trailer. They showed us going through sections of Midgar that we don't actually go through in FF7. So it's impossible. They could actually show more of the city, show more of the terrain, have more content, have more characterization, have more fleshing out of the story and the setting. AKA, it's fuller. It's a more complete experience. It's a more fulfilling experience. And so, having all of Midgar being one episode, I would be okay with if they fleshed it out to that extent. You with me? So then, have from Midgar to... let me think about that for a moment. Let's say Midgar up until about when they're going to the Golden Saucer, I think, would be a good second act. Maybe further than that. Depends on how much they add to the in-between section. It also depends on how they deal with the overworld question. This is something else I wanted to talk about, so I'd actually like to mention this. Some people are worried that they'll go Corridor Fest with this, and that is a valid concern, I think. I don't think they're going to do that. I think, especially the people working on this game, if Square Enix as a company isn't aware, the people working on this game are aware of the negative feedback about the Corridor Fest of FF13. Yes, and I've talked about this a billion times, so I'm not going to rehash that argument. The point being, this idea, this concept, could work out. Bear with me. Could work out if they do basically what is effectively an MMO-style seamless transition situation. Now, when I mean MMO-style, I don't mean like it has to be FF12 or whatever. What I mean by that is if, for example, you get out of Midgar, and then rather than, going to the on-map, going to the overworld map and having random encounters on the overworld map, Midgar's right there, and you just keep going. And you just keep going in this direction. The overworld's there, but you're just walking on it. You see where I'm going with this? And so there's no transition. There's no difference between overworld and dungeon levels. The two layers don't exist. And so you just kind of walk until you actually see Calm in the distance. And it's like, aha, there's Calm. Let's go ahead and let's go see what's going on there. And then let's get the big backstory on Sephiroth, all that fun stuff. I think that could actually work. And there are plenty of ways code-wise to make that work. For God's sakes, going as far back as Asheron's Call, which was in the late 90s, we have programming ways to cheat around the stresses of having a seamless loading environment. So I think they could do that very easily and very smoothly. Of course, the other alternative is they could basically go all in on, let's call it what it is, the nostalgia factor. Literally being like, WoW is a fairly seamless MMO. There's basically only the 4 server blocks, and that's it. But yeah, so Asheron's Call is actually another example of this. Words. So you, what they could, going all in on the nostalgia factor, and this is also possible, especially since this is Nomura, and several other people whose names I don't know how to pronounce, who are into this, who are working on this, is, you leave Midgar and then it actually goes, and like the camera, I can see this literally, like the camera goes, and you're all the way up here, and the character only shrinks like a little bit, so you suddenly have this giant character next to a nearly fully rendered Midgar, and you've basically got the overworld as you're wandering your way over here. And then and then the camera zooms back in again. In other words, basically just a take on the overworld concept, which I think could actually work out surprisingly well if they do it like that. And of course, they could do it. The entire reason for doing that would be to appeal to the original audience, to appeal to people who want the original game just properly done. And I think that could work too. I don't know which they're going to go with, but I do think either direction could work. Um, uh, so yeah, actually. Oh, and I was talking about the episodic thing. Uh, yeah, it does, doesn't it, Kay? Um, it's even true for the NPCs if you pay attention. But yeah, so episodic thing, going up to like say the Golden Saucer for episode two, and then probably I'd say until right either after Nibelheim or after the Yuffie section for the next chapter, and then all the way up to the big moment with Eris for the next chapter, and then uh, honestly, I'd probably go from that until what we're going to refer to as Endgame, and with the Diamond Weapon Midgar situation. Actually, probably just go straight to that, straight to the end at that point. As some people tend to forget, Disc 3 basically didn't have much content on it. Disc 3 was, and here's the last dungeon, and of course the optional stuff you could do, and that was it. That does bring me to one other thing I want to mention. Um, I am very hopeful they have the optional stuff, that they have chocobo racing, that they have most of it's in the Golden Saucer, let's be honest with ourselves. But I do hope they have all of that stuff still in the game. I feel it would be genuinely lacking to get rid of it. That being said, if they get rid of it, I understand. I know that sounds weird, but again, speaking from the perspective of they've already screwed up, they already should have started it years ago. Therefore, now they have to work with what that they have, which is the time crunch and the budget crunch. If they have to cut something from the game, cut the mini games. Don't cut the content. Don't cut the story. Don't cut the characterization. Don't cut the Don Corneo section, because the wall market section was actually there to be, the lighthearted humor, silliest aspect of FF7. Don't cut the silly out of FF7. It's something Kay and I have talked about. You want to have that kind of lighthearted aspect to FF7 that was there. It was willing to make fun of itself. It was willing to be silly and have humor to it. Don't cut any of that. If you have to cut something, if the chopping blade has come down, move the chopping blade over to the minigame stuff. If that's just my opinion. So if everything else is still good, I'm okay with them getting rid of the minigame stuff. I'd rather they not. In an ideal world, I would rather they not, but um, yeah, I guess that's all I have to say on that. Any questions before I cut off and get back to Kingdom Hearts? Yeah, Cloud and a Drag in modern graphics. They might skip that just because of the recent cultural crap. Who knows? Oh my goodness. Hi, Perry Berry, by the way. Questions, go, quick. Speed Square. What about I can't think of what it's called. There's a rock paper scissors mini game in the arcade, in that I hate. I almost never do that. Keep the underwater exploration. That's a good question. I think that depends on whether or not they will actually have the overworld at all. If they do have an overworld mechanic, yes. If they don't, trickier, because they would basically be doing what I was talking about with the seamless transition thing underwater, which is possible but more difficult and more costly to do. So that becomes a little more iffy. Um, how would I handle the cloud address situation? Personally, I wouldn't change it at all. I mean that more or less seriously. Have him be in the dress. We've seen artwork of Cloud being prettied up, so I would actually make it so that like you have say five, I guess, transitions for there's normal Cloud and then there's fully sexy Cloud. Bear with me, and then there's everything in between where he just kind of looks and of course number one Cloud where you just get the dress and nothing else would look like a guy in a dress, which would add to the tone of the situation. That's how I would do that. Um, Sephiroth, yeah. Um, what else we got here? The Mook gun redesign. Actually, I kind of like the gun redesign. It looks less realistic and more FF-ish, and that's kind of what I like. Do they should they incorporate Crisis content? Absolutely. I think if nothing else, there should be additional cutscenes to help flesh out some of the relevant story of Crisis Core, which is very relevant to FF7's events. If nothing else, we need to see a little bit more of Zack in FF7. That's just my opinion. I know that some people don't like Crisis Core and some people do. I personally love the story of Crisis Core, even though it's got some serious flaws to it. So yeah, if nothing else, Zack does need to be an FF7 proper remake, in my opinion. That's what I would do if I was in charge of it. Oh, excuse me. So I think that, yeah, I do actually think that Daniel-san. I do think they'd probably tone down the Don Corneo scenes in general, because this is the modern era and this isn't the '90s anymore, and that's basically the reason. Um, LeBlanc's theme. Bow, 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 bow. Uh, if you cut mini games, what are the Chocobo racing and rating? See, again, like I said, I would love for the Chocobo racing, especially proper Chocobo racing, to be in the game. I really do. I think that'd be great. Um, but again, if you're going to chop something, if you're running out of time and budget, the thing to chop would be that. I mean, I hope you understand my reasoning on that. Now, that being said, let's say we're in an ideal circumstance. Let's see, they're doing the episode stuff so they can put more time and polish in the effort. Let's say they're selling very, very well, so budget is not an issue. Then, yeah, absolutely, I think we can have real, genuine racing, and that would be super freaking awesome. Um, and I'd be totally in favor of that. Uh, as I've said many, many times, the snowboarding minigame, which is one most people tend to forget, I've noticed in FF7, is actually one of my favorite snowboarding games general, along with the motorcycle racing game where you're taken out of the other motorcycles. Both of those, in my honest opinion, are funner than other actual racing games that were on the PS1 at the time. So those two being fully fleshed out, that would be great. And given the live Kingdom Heartsy FF15 style engine, they could do a lot with both of those. So that would be awesome. Um, Guitar Wizard, I don't think they'll do that because I personally think, especially with the people involved, being the people involved, I don't think they're going to change like anything really major as far as the story. That being said, if I was in charge, that would certainly be a really horrific moment to happen there. Um, so yeah, I could see where you're going with that one. Uh, that's a good question, Captain Jobby. I'm going to go ahead and say no. For the reason I always say no to that. Optional is almost always a good thing. Like if you're going to have something, make it optional. As I've said this a trillion times in game design. This goes for story as well. If people want that story about Zack, they're going to go look for it. You and I are going to go look for that story with Zack, right? So there's no need to make it mandatory, I don't think. I know, and anybody who is new to the series is either going to be interested enough to search it out for themselves or not interested enough and doesn't want it shoved down their throat. So I would keep it optional for the same reason I would have done it in FF7. Um, let's see. Actually, it wouldn't be that hard to get Supernova to work, especially if it was just based. Imagine this for a moment, Bandit. Imagine you're still active and you're still running around, and you can dodge certain aspects of the Supernova attack, and it's just doing like passive damage to you. So, like every few seconds, you're just taking damage because Supernova's going off, and it's going off for like a minute or whatever, right? And then there's chunks of debris and planet, whatever they're trying to hit you that you can actually dodge. So you're doing something while the attack's going off, even though it's still hitting you, and trying to heal your way through it, and then the big hit happens at the end, and that's the stagger hit, the one that actually makes you go, oh god, that's how I would do something like that. It's pretty easy to translate that into real time if you think about it. What do you think the price of an episode would be? Okay, do you mean realistically, or do you mean what I would do, Night Dawn? Because those are two very different questions. Um, Zach flashback is not optional. Uh, Oh, I'd bring the Golden Saucer Theater up to 11, especially with voice acting. Are you kidding me? That being said, God, I hope we get a real voice actress for Eris. I mean no offense to the woman who plays her in Kingdom Hearts 2, but she does the worst voice acting job I've heard in a long time in that. I mean, really, really, really bad job of that. So I hope we get someone better than that in the English translation in FF7. What kinds of new materia would I add? Oh, that's a good question. But if I'm being 100% honest, as much as I love the idea of adding new materia, I wouldn't do it. They've already got enough on their plate. There's way too much work to be done to add something like that to the dynamic, so I wouldn't actually do that. This guy are sick is something I would keep word for word, especially if it was voice acted. This guy are sick. Just say it so casually like that. Um, if they had the full time and budget to go full force and online trade scores, that would be so cool. I would be super awesome to buy that, Big Fox. In fact, as an additional thought, they could add that kind of stuff. Like they could have a separate team, a separate development team working just on the minigame stuff on the side. They wouldn't do this because that would be smart and they have squirrels for brains, but they could do that and therefore have that kind of stuff still in the game and just kind of tack it on. It's easier to do that than you'd think if you have that kind of multi-team crew going on. Um, Mina Suvari, is that her? Yeah. FF7 that's a weird scale, Darkrai. FF7, let's see, for me it's 6, 4, 5, 9, 7. So 7 would be 5 then. Should they keep W item? Absolutely. Should they keep the glitch? Yes, I think they should keep the W item glitch, even though it's a glitch. The materia system, I think it absolutely will be in. They would be really, 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 really dumb to remove the materia system if I'm being completely blunt. There's plenty of ways you can still have that work, especially since most spells are probably going to be either homing or have like a specific path, like a projectile thing. So adding the ability to you have to actually aim a spell or just hitting a spell in a specific spot would be the kind of thing for magic materia. Most of the other materia would fit rather nicely. With it. One of the things you could do, for example, is in the case of all materia, there's two things you could do with this. One, you could turn it into a literal point-centered AoE. In other words, just you drop down fire into this area rather than fire on a target or fire in a direction. Or they could have it so fire just hits everything that is in combat at the moment. Just both of these are viable, but the point is even something like all materia still works for a Kingdom Hearts system. You just have to translate it a little bit. It'd be easier to do than you'd think with the materia stuff, though. That's not an issue. Full beat 'em up mechanics for Tifa beating up Scarlet would be awesome. Yes. Um, yeah, if they actually made you kill Eris, that would be even worse. Am I looking forward to the cross-dressing section? Honestly, I am, but then again, I'm looking forward to the whole damn game, so I can't say anything about that. Uh, oh, shush, little Billy. If Magicite replaced Materia, then it would be amazing. Um, I think they should keep a max party of 3. Yes, absolutely. There are many, many reasons to have a party cap size, and most of them have to do with balance. Most of them have to do with making it so that you have a proper balance of difficulty to ease to flexibility. And 3 party size basically is, in my opinion, one of the best ways to do that. One of the more proper, I think is probably the word I want to use here, ways to do that. Let's get a background going on here. Let's have this is how hyped I am, guys. This is my hype level. FF7. I love you so. Um, I am at net positive right now, not Night Dawn, to answer your question. Um, and I think that's all the questions I've gotten. Option to kick Scarlet off the cannon. But then how would we kill her when she gets into the Proud Claude? Um, Not enough lightning and golden here. Hang on, I can fix that. Give me a second. Where's You know what? No, we'll just kind of have the fake thing here. Anyways, do I think Vincent and Yuffie should be compulsory characters? No, absolutely not. Once again, I do agree with the optional idea. I do agree with the concept of leaving those as optional characters, even though they are relevant to the story and whatnot, for the reasons already mentioned. So I would leave them as optional, not just because the original did it, but because I agree with the reasons the original did it. Mating Eris with Red 13, I would absolutely keep that in, personally. It will probably be cut. The sad reality is it will probably be cut, for the obvious reasons, but it should be left in because it really shines a light onto Hojo. You really understand Hojo as a character because he's trying to mate a wolf lion thing with a woman, And he's just totally like, yeah, like totally blasé about it. He doesn't even think, I must do this terrible thing for science. No, it's totally normal. That just speaks so much to his character. Um, and so I do think that should be kept in. Don't worry, I have the Canada Dry, as you can see. Excuse me. Yeah. Oh, yeah, they could actually make the tower. Okay, let me be honest. There's one mini game I hate in FF7, and it's that frickin' Fort Condor. I have done that back in the day, and then I decided it was stupid and terrible and not fun, and I've never done it since. I've never even shown it off since. It's just, ugh, screw that. Um, they could actually, they could actually have it and do it properly, which would be great. Um, we'll see. Again, it's the same minigame problem I already mentioned. Is there anything story related I would take out of the remake for the sake of pacing? No, there's not. They would definitely need better translation in a few situations. Definitely need better implications, trying to get across the story better. The English translation has huge, huge issues, as I've talked about when I was doing the marathon last year. But I would, uh, I would not actually take anything out. No, submarine minigame. All minigames should be cut if it comes down to that. If we got to keep like one minigame, we would probably be keeping Chocobo Racing just because it's so iconic, which is a bit of a shame because I feel like several minigames, including the submarine one, including the snowboarding one, including the racing one, all are good. Actually, Big Fox, it wouldn't be that hard to do, relatively speaking, based on if they did the proper scripting triggers for that. In other words, you could go back and get him. The way I'm phrasing this is improper. Let me put it to you this way. You're still playing the same game, relatively. Even though a new episode has come out with new content, it's not like you're loading a completely separate game and loading it. You're just loading a game that now has more content unlocked. At least if they're smart, they'll do that. Um, we'll see, I suppose, if that actually works out that way. But whatever. Should Civ be given more motivation for joining the party? Not really. I think his existing lack of motivation actually fits surprisingly well. The apathy situation there. Alternate skins, they'll definitely do alternate skins. Do I think they should? No, but I think they will. Um, I Leander, I literally just answered that question. Yes, I would keep them as optional party members. How would master materia work? I don't even understand that question. What would need to be different about it? I nothing would need to be translated other than the same basic thing that every other piece of materia has to be translated. For example, the green master materia, you just have access to all the spells. We actually saw a magic thing in the window on the left when we were actually looking at the gameplay. So it's like you just, hey, and here's all the magic. The yellow stuff would just change certain level of your attacks. For example, Death Blow ultimately just basically adds an additional dice roll to your attack. That's not really hard to do uh, in an action RPG format. Um, Bug would also work very well. Most of the materia, I really don't know how to explain this, but most of the material would be very, very easy to translate into an action RPG format, into a Kingdom Hearts format. So I don't think there's any issue with translating the master material work. Uh, there is one thing that I'm curious about, and that's the summons. But honestly, I imagine they will most likely do the logical thing with summons. They will basically have a summon, big animation, which should be optional, big animation, and then just everything in the area gets hit with a certain amount of damage. Um, that's how I would do summons. No real need to mix that up all over much. You could mix that up, but I don't think they should. DLC, I would not be opposed to DLC, but then again, I'm not against DLC on the face of it. DLC is just like everything else, aka DLC is something that can and has been done bad, but isn't necessarily bad in its own right. So quad hit, again, very easy. You could do it two ways for quad hit. You could either literally make it so each time you hit the button, you swing four times. See Symphony of the Night for a good example of a game that has done this, even though that was a 2D game. It's still the same thing with the Chrysagorum. You can make it so that each hit you do just does four different damage rolls. So you hit them once, and then four damage numbers pop up based on that. Or you can do it so that every time you do the swing, it reduces your cooldown the back end cooldown of your swing. So, example, it's basically a haste effect at that point. So you can swing faster. You still have to hit faster, but those are all ways you could get quad hit to work. It would be very simple. Do I have any character I would like to add to the remake as an optional? No, I don't think so. I don't think there's anything I would add to that personally. I would keep Kate Sith. Yes, I know that's not how it's pronounced. No, I don't care. I've actually already answered that ultimate paradox. In summary, my answer is yes, they should keep it. Um, should Yuffie and Vincent? Oh my God! Stop asking about Yuffie and Vincent. I've answered this 3 times already. Yes, Yuffie and Vincent should be optional. I would explode with joy, Darkrai. I will say this one thing I would like DLC wise, and I know FF13 2, I want to say, did this, or was it 13.3? Anyways, optional boss fights with like additional cutscenes and whatnot to go with them would be kind of fun. Um, and I have to admit, this is probably just me, being a fan or whatever here. But it would be really, really fun to have optional boss fights with like Kingdom Hearts characters, for example, or characters from other Final Fantasies, like Cecil, fighting against Golbez. I think that'd just be kind of cool if they did it right. I think that would be a lot of fun. Yes, Little Billy, absolutely. Lightning and Hope should be in FF7. No, I'm no God. Um, um, uh, One other thing that I would like for them to do is have the story keep going. I know that sounds weird, but in my opinion, FF7's story hasn't actually finished yet. We had Advent Children, which finished several arcs, but actually still left a few things dangling. Then we had Dirge of Cerberus, which is actually the last FF7 game we had, which ended on effectively a cliffhanger, which went nowhere because Gact is an idiot, to summarize. FF7's story hasn't actually finished yet. There is still more that could be done. There is still more that could be said. There are still things that are left dangling there. I would like to actually see FF7 be concluded. Um, but oh yeah, and Gilgamesh should absolutely be in. That is, I mean that sincerely. Ignoring the fact that they've already made Gilgamesh the multi-dimensional character across the FFs, the one connecting feature between all the FFs, he would be a good fit in my opinion, especially if they got Joe DiMaggio to do his voice. That would be great. Right, I didn't. I'm sorry, Night Dawn. I asked you a question and I didn't see a response. Do you mean what I think the price will be, or do you think what the price should be? Because those are two very different questions. Do I think episodic will playable? And honestly, if it sells well enough, I could absolutely see that happening. Samurai, yes. Um, Honestly, I feel like that was just a Easter egg. Personally, Big Fox. He asked if the Aya Brea billboard was something that's plugging future Parasite Eve, or was just what something else. I think it's just an Easter egg. Um, Oh, that would be so cool, Nicolas. One of the things Nicolas just mentioned is the idea of the second to last Sephiroth fight, having everyone fighting at the same time rather than just a party of 3. That would be very cool. Um, I guess Bandit. I just don't like that. I guess, yeah. Both. Okay, both. The pricing I think it will be is $60 for the original, and then $60 for each new episode because this is Squirrel for Brains. The price I think it should be is $60 for the original, and I mean that, and let's say $30 for each new episode after that. It is possible they will lower the price, but they would only lower it to like 45, I think, at the absolute least, for each subsequent episode. Should Genova Cloud have a voice? That's a good question, actually. I agree with the idea that okay, so I think Genova Cloud and Real Cloud and all the other clouds that aren't the cloud currently being shown on screen shouldn't have a voice. I think it should just be text. I think that will add to the flavor, first of all, and to the alien nature of it. Because when you have a situation where everyone is voice acted except for one voice, which is just speaking in text, it pulls that voice out. It makes it different. It adds the contrast, in addition to fleshing out the mystery of that. So I think that would be really cool. Um, Oh, absolutely, Kay. Let's actually have us. Okay, some people, I've talked about this in Kingdom Hearts as well. Some people know that one of my favorite type of fights in any game is where you just have a straight up sword fight with someone else. You've got a sword, they've got a sword, and you have to actually think about it. You can't just wail on them. It's not like a big puzzle Zelda boss. It's a sword duel. I like this in Suikoden 2. I like this in Twilight Princess. I like this in Kingdom Hearts in several cases. There are other examples. I would love it if that very final fight with Cloud versus Sephiroth, the very, 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 very final fight, just after everything, inside Cloud, I would love it if it's just a sword duel. No special abilities, no big limit breaks, just the two of you dueling it out and actually having to do that. I think that would be really cool. They probably won't do that, but I think that would be awesome. What I think of Barrett's shades, I don't have an opinion on them. They don't bother me. Shrug. That would be interesting, Dakota. Yes, I am going to be playing games today. I am going to be continuing the Kingdom Hearts lore run, but this talking about the FF7 stuff has been widely requested by a lot of people, and I just didn't have the time yesterday, and I had a massive headache yesterday, so I didn't actually do it. Hey, Zeiss. A duel in total silence would be even better. Like, just have this really quiet choir in the background, just really, really, really quiet playing. You don't even hear the blade as it's hitting him. Or maybe just that's the only sound effect, is when your blade hits him. No footsteps for you running around. None of the ha, she, ha. All of that sound is removed. All you hear is whenever your blade connects or his blade connects. And there's just a sudden ching or, and that's it. That's the thing. Because, you're not physically fighting him after all. So that would not only make sense, but it would add to the flavor of the scene. Barrett is, in fact, Morpheus from The Matrix, yes. I have not mentioned the rumor, no, Stukia. I have been talking many, many times about the fact that Square Enix has been going more and more into the PC, and I think it's a great thing. I am hopeful that we will see Kingdom Hearts on the PC soon, like a lot. Uh, I can't think of. I mean, it shouldn't be gory Night Dawn. I don't think there's. FF has never been a gory series. Um, I think the horror of the Genova Sheen should be done properly. I mean, it is horrifying as is. Even playing it now, no changes to anything. The scene where you're following the trail of blood up Shinra Tower is pretty horrifying. So I think that should be left in, absolutely. Um, but I don't think they should like make it more violent or more gory or anything like that. I think they should. Guitar Wizard. Excuse me. I'm one of those people who thinks they really should remake the dialogue in many cases. I think that's one of the biggest things I would want, even if they left the graphics the same. That's like the one thing I would really want in an FF7 remake. So yeah, absolutely. In that case, um, excuse me. I think honestly, Green, it's in the latter. Green asks, "Do I think Square Enix is like, oh, our fans want stuff, or do you think they're in a point where financially they need to do this?" I think they're financially being pushed into this. And again, as I mentioned earlier, as I hinted earlier, if they didn't do this now, they basically couldn't in the future. So I already talked about that samurai. Basically, I think they will remove it, but I don't think they should. To summarize. Um, But yeah, the blood-soaked corridor should be handled pretty much straight on. Um, no, little Billy, you're terrible. Uh, Debatable, Bandit. Since I can see where your perspective is on that one. Will they use the same music? Well, probably not. But I will think that they should bring Umatsu back at least for some of this. The Lord knows the man can do remixes of his own songs, and he's done it many, many times. So I think they should at least bring him in on it. I wouldn't mind Yoko Shimomura coming back and doing this as well, as long as Matsuda stays away from it. Um, Probably Darkrai. Darkrai asks if Square's using their Shinra Technologies group on this project, and I think that is likely. I haven't either, Guitar Wizard. Hey, Lonely Hero. Do you think it'll be linear? I've actually already answered that, Stukia. Basically, I do not think it will be linear. No. Uh, Umatsu hasn't involved. That's actually really sad. That is genuinely depressing. I imagine he's just not interested or too old or whatever. Lord knows the man is getting on in his years. That's a pity, but whatever. Honestly, this if they actually translate everything from the original FF7 to this, I think it will be rated M. I don't think that will be an issue. I don't think any of it deserves to be rated M, if I'm being blunt. This will be one of those Peggy 18 kind of games, you know. But I could see it getting that rating given the current environment, given the current cultural problems we're having right now. Um, is that everything? Have I missed anyone's questions? Everyone's hammering me with questions right now. Oh yeah. Speaking of which, there is one other thing that I would absolutely add if I was in charge of this. New Game Plus. Add in New Game Plus. Definitely, absolutely add in New Game Plus. Holy crap. Give me a New Game Plus in every game ever, but especially FF7, for God's sakes. How would I do the gunplay? Actually, we've kind of already seen how that's going to work, Dakota, and honestly, I think it'll work very well. Basically, instead of, tap, tap, tap to do swing, 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 just kind of like holding down tap. And as you're doing it, you continue to fire, like, and damage is done in an interval every few seconds or every second or so as you're continuing to hold down the button at whatever you're targeting. We've already seen the game has a lock-on mechanic, and again, Kingdom Hearts style, so that's how I would do that. So, um, as for Vincent, you wouldn't even have to vary that all that much. For example, bam, bam, could literally just be, one shot. Actually, I've already answered that question earlier, Sabo. Sorry, I'm kind of skipping over duplicate questions. I have no pluses or minuses about the sunglasses. They're fine. I don't care. Should they implement platforming mechanics for the sector climb? I'm going to say no, especially since that would be a lot of time and money invested in something that's effectively unnecessary. And remember, they're already stripped for time and budget, so I wouldn't do that. That would be awesome, Nicholas. High Plate Smasher. New weapons, that would be cool, but only for DLC kind of thing. I don't think that should be put in the main game. Again, time and budget. We got to work with what we got here. Um, I am not even going to comment on that, Samurai. They should, in my opinion, keep most of the voice actors that have already done these voices for these characters. I feel like they're pretty good in most cases. The one and only exception is Eris. I think that they should actually have someone who knows how to voice act in for Eris. But that's it. Not Mina Suvari or whatever her name is. Um, well, I think it would be Berserk Kaifrin, and I think that would actually work even better in an ARPG format than it does in a normal format. For those of you curious, his question was, do I think Vincent's limits will be able to control him or not? And again, in an ARPG format, it would be great for him to just be wildly attacking whatever, completely out of our control. And that would actually possibly make him better in some cases. And of course, worse in others, because, the same reason it was worse in the original game. There's sometimes we can just heal the boss. Anyone remember that? Yes, there should be blood in that scene, Darkrai, when Sephiroth kills Aerith. Spoiler alert. And they will probably call her Aerith, by the way. Barrett machine gun is a machine gun arm. Yes, I know that, Final Cloud. I don't understand your statement. Am I skipping out and out? Because I feel like people are just coming back to me like, hey, why didn't I just talked about this 2 minutes ago and people are asking about it. Maybe I've just got a lot of delay today. I don't know. Would I add story elements of Advent Children and Dirge of Cerberus? Yes, but only bits and pieces. Advent Children, there's a decent amount of it that I think is relevant. Dirge of Cerberus, much, much less. But there are still elements of both games, or both works, I feel, that do deserve to be in that. Now, Crisis Core, I think, should be in much more, but shrug. That would be awesome, Danielson, if they actually had, if the 80 flights of Shinra Tower, they actually had their animations change as they get up, so they're like, oh god, their animation just gets more and more worn out as they go up. They probably won't do that, but it would be awesome if they did. Um, yeah, we are, Samurai. It's weird, isn't it? The South Edge location. I have no thoughts on that, Aded. Most likely that's just there to mention the fact that they're aware of the fact that that's a thing and that Advent Children will probably be in it. That's probably why that's there. Absolutely, Night Dawn. It's not just how popular. Okay, let's make this clear. There's a difference between critical success and financial success. A huge difference, actually. Statistically speaking, historically speaking, most of the things that have been very critically successful, that are timeless works, were not financially successful when they came out. This is all over the place, and I've already discussed in many previous videos and streams why that is. So it is. I think it is very, very dependent on how financially successful the FF7 proper remake is, assuming it's a proper remake, I shouldn't call it that, as to if they do anything else with FF5 or FF6 or FF8 or FF9. So, yes, that is correct, Takoida, which is why I mentioned the Advent Children connection. Do I think the character animation should change depending on sadness or fury? Do I think they'll keep the status effect? Yes. We'll answer that question first. But do I think their animation should change? Yes. Do I think they will? Much more debatable. We'll see. uh, could they add the Before Crisis tie-ins? That's a lot trickier because there's actually a lot less of Before Crisis that's actually relevant to the overall story of FF7. The stuff about Rufus, the stuff about the original Avalanche, and that's actually kind of it. But I do think both of those things should at least be mentioned and referenced in the story proper. How do you think the date will go? I don't think it'll really change any. I don't think there's anything to be translated there per se. They still should keep it so you can still date Barrett, Yuffie, Eris, or Tifa, I think, though. Should the building in Costa del Sol cost more adjusting for inflation? That would be funny. um, oh my gosh. Do I think summons will be in AoE? I think they will attack all enemies in combat. I've already actually mentioned that. I think Eris should have the same voice actress she had in Kingdom Hearts 1. I'm just going to say that because I think she did a good job of it. I do not think Eris should have the voice actress she had in Kingdom Hearts 2 because she did a terrible job of it. Should there be multiplayer? Local co-op multiplayer I'm okay with. That's been in the FF series since 4, actually, and it was in 5 and it was in 6. So I'm okay with that. Should it be trickier? I'm going to leave that question aside. When do I think Part 1 will release? Probably 2017, so most likely. If they had the time and budget, would I like a playable Advent Children and all the other things? Yes, except for Dirge of Cerberus. Because screw Dirge of Cerberus. It's not on the table yet, Green. Green asks, do I think other proper remakes of this style are on the table? To which I say, no, not yet. Again, it's all about how financially successful they are. And more importantly, how Square Enix, Squirrel for Brains, thinks it's financially successful. If they think that there is enough money to justify it, then they will go ahead and do other remakes. If they don't, then they won't. It's very simple. We've already seen this. So, yeah. What else we got? Optional dating with Sid. That is such a stupid. We'll talk about that later, Kay, but I don't know why Mina Savari just did the worst possible acting job of that. I think I'm actually caught up on questions, which is great. So I'm going to go ahead and chop this off and toss this onto YouTube right now, and then we'll go ahead and get started with the Kingdom Hearts lore run. So I will see you guys in a bit.